All right, let's talk about the New England Patriots. There's no Brady, there's no Belichick. It's fully a new era, as I'm sure the rest of the AFC North is rejoicing. Although the rest of the AFC is now frustrated. There's a new top dog with the Kansas City Chiefs going on. But for the Patriots, I'm actually fascinated in what they do. Because for the longest time, when I've made these kind of videos, the Patriots have almost been an exception to every rule. You kind of have to understand how Belichick works and how they try and do things. What we've seen is that when people who aren't Belichick try to do the Belichick thing and the Patriot way and all of that, it usually doesn't work out too well. Jared Mayo, a lot of people really like. I think he could be a good head coach, but just in general, exactly are they going to do things, I think is fascinating. And what's really fascinating about this team is just how little players they have locked in and how open this current situation is. Like, you look at their current projected cap space and cash, they're legitimately projected to have well over $100 million in cash. So while football is not basketball and it's not, baseball, like having just money, you can't just throw it at guys because a lot of times guys are, they don't want to get franchise tagged, so they just re-sign with their current team, right? So a lot of guys don't hit the open market, which is part of an issue. But at the same time, you can still, maybe you draft a wide receiver to hopefully be your number one wide receiver, and then you sign guys to be number 2 and 3 wide receivers. Things like that can still help you out a lot. So you look at this and say, wow, a lot of cash, a lot of cap space. This is a great situation. Well, got guys you got to spend it on too. So this chart is going to be all of the upcoming free agents for the Patriots. Well, the key free agents, not every free agent. And also how many millions of dollars they're projected to receive in free agency. The key guy, Kyle Duggar, who, I don't think he had his best season last year, but I think you still assume that he's very good. Definitely has shown a lot of flashes throughout the course of his career. He might be someone just a franchise tag candidate, to be honest. Maybe you don't even worry about the long-term deal. Especially the safety franchise tag is not going to be as expensive as some other franchise tags, so maybe that makes it easier to get a deal. But yeah, projected for $17 million. Trent Brown is an interesting one. Like, what do you do with Trent Brown? Obviously, he's had his good seasons, but he just needs to stay on the field, which it's such a wild card. That's part of why the money isn't projected to be a lot. Also, Mike Onwenu, another offensive lineman, Brown, a tackle, Mike Onwenu, kind of plays everywhere. Also, when did it become Mike? I thought he was Michael Onwenu. Anyway, he's fantastic. Honestly, didn't have his best year last year, which might have cost him some money. But at the same time, he still is a player who I actually think that $15 million might be a little low. And again, the former Patriot way is they're letting all these guys walk, right? That's what they used to always do. But it's a new team. It's a new era, and I don't know how this front office is going to run this. I know how Belichick would run it, but I don't know what they're going to do. Hunter Henry, projected for $6 million. It might be worth it to keep him. He played well for them. Keeping him in the building might not be the worst idea in the world. Josh Uche, I have no idea what to make of him because it seems like he's so good in pass rush and not that great in run. Like, I don't know what to do with that. Maybe you keep him, maybe you don't. Guys like Kendrick Bourne, I like Kendrick Bourne. It was weird. He couldn't get playing time these past couple of years. I thought that was just a weird situation, but I like him. I think if you give him more playing time, he could be good. And maybe, the nice thing about not using him potentially properly is, well, now you can probably sign him for less, but maybe he wants to go somewhere else. I don't know. Again, and then guys like kind of everyone else on the list, the other few guys on the list, you kind of look at them and say, okay, maybe they're not stars, but if you do let them walk, you got to replace them with somebody, right? That's kind of the one thing I always talk about, because some people might say, we'll just let Mike Gesicki go. Okay, well, then you have to replace him with another tight end for $2 million, so it's kind of the same thing, and there's obviously other free agents. These are just the key ones. There's also a few players they could cut. These 3 guys, I think they're probably all going to get cut. J.C. Jackson's, now, I guess here, maybe I'll say it this way. I think these guys are all going to not be getting paid the millions of dollars you see next to their name that would be freed up if they're cut. Like J.C. Jackson, he's not going to get the $14 million. Now, they might work out some sort of a deal and say, hey, didn't go so well in Los Angeles. How about, you stay here for, $2 million a year. We're not going to pay you the 14, but we'll give you a couple million, to play another year. And he says, yeah, sure, let's, tear up the other contract and give me the money I'm owed plus $2 million a year, and we'll do that. That's a lot of times how these things work. I could see that happening with these 3 players. But, again, you're probably going to get the additional money that you would get, and the additional $27 million by getting rid of these guys, which you could then use to either pay them to keep them back or replace them with other players. That's usually how these kind of things end up working. So final chart again, $78 million in cap space, as I mentioned, $133 million in cash. The cost to re-sign everybody wouldn't be cheap, but it would still just be $71 million. So you'd still have a pretty good amount of carryover. You wouldn't have to go over the cap at all to re-sign everybody if you wanted to. They could clear up $27 million as well in cap space and cash. And the thing we have to mention, the number 3 overall pick, which is interesting because my mindset, to do some quick draft analysis, I still haven't done a lot of deep dive into the prospects yet. I need to get around to doing that. But my analysis on the draft stuff in general has always been, if you think there's a quarterback that you say, this is a good quarterback prospect, I like this quarterback prospect, they should always go before any other prospect. That's just how I view that, because getting a quarterback is so difficult. If you think there's a quarterback prospect that's good, you draft a quarterback prospect or you trade down. Like those should be the two options, in my opinion. It becomes a question of like, well, what if you really like this wide receiver prospect that you think is going to be generational? Would you rather, it's the Calvin Johnson versus Jamarcus Russell thing, right? Obviously, Calvin Johnson worked out. But again, if Jamarcus Russell was a superstar, well, then you'd still rather have Jamarcus Russell, right? And I think it's so hard to predict if a quarterback is going to be good or not. That's how I view that. So for me, it's very simple. It has nothing to do with any of the other prospects. If you think a quarterback prospect is good, you draft that quarterback prospect, and then you work on everything else. This is my argument with the C.J. Stroud thing. When the Texans were, there was a talk, are they going to go Will Anderson or C.J. Stroud at pick number 2 before they traded up to number 3 to get both of them. My argument was, I don't care how much you like Will Anderson. If you think C.J. Stroud's a good prospect, which I did and which they did, you draft C.J. Stroud, and then they said, let's just get them both. But, which maybe you try and do. But, yeah, so that's kind of how I would view moving forward. And if you get the quarterback, though, you have to put him in a good situation, right? So you have to build a team around him to make it work. So maybe what you do, I guess the other argument is maybe you trade down, or maybe just don't love any quarterback prospects, so you get someone else and try to build it up so you can get a quarterback next year. But again, when you're picking top 3, you kind of got to take advantage of that. So I don't know. It's an interesting situation for what the Patriots are in. Yeah, a new era for the New England Patriots. They're more of a traditional team now. It's weird. Or maybe they won't be. Maybe they're still going to try to do the same things that won them 6 Super Bowls, and we'll see how well that works out. But yeah, definitely a team that is very much in the, a bowl is most useful when it is empty mindset right now. A lot of ways they can go. But yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.